So when I was living in Europe a couple years ago, and for the record, we would be there now this summer if it wasn't for the stupid, COVID 1984 thing, and if they don't, if certain countries don't force the vaccine passport or whatever it is, we'll be there next year. But I was spending a year in Europe, kind of targeting buildings because that's what I'm all about. I love just staring at buildings, and I was specifically looking for Enlightenment era buildings because I wanted to see how they developed based on the occult, how the occult basically came out into the open and packaged, kind of slapped Christianity on it to sell it. And they did it brilliantly with, the Copernican revolution, and you just go on from there. Even the Darwinian revolution is just, Gnosticism repackaged. And this was before I learned about the mud flood. And so as we're looking at the millennial reign, I kind of have to be honest about this because it's easy to try to shove everything into a box. Say, well, no, it was all the millennial reign. But then there's some things that I was seeing over there that would be a little bit troubling in this context, and I'll get to them in a second. One of the big buildings that really, I guess it wasn't really cognitive dissonance, but I really struggled with it because I didn't have a context. And I think most people, they don't have a context for the mud flood. They see this stuff and they're like, this is weird. I don't know what to make of it. One of it was when we went to Bath, England, and they have there a bath, and it was completely like 150 years ago, completely buried in the dirt. And they, of course, dug it out. And this is really important to the narrative. They actually constructed a lot of statues in it to make it look like a Roman house. They'll even tell you that on the tour. You go there and it's like, oh yeah, we added all these Roman statues. They weren't original. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. But it really plagued with my and kind of the back burner of my consciousness, because I'm like, how in the world do you have this beautiful Roman bathhouse that get buried in the dirt? And this is, of course, they say, oh, well, it was intended to for 200 years and it was just buried in dirt, and then people didn't know it was there anymore. That's the narrative we're working with here. All right, Rick is in the house.
Welcome.
All right, Rick. So I'm going to introduce you. Just feel free to, when you're ready, to turn off your or turn on your microphone, and there it is. All right, how's it going tonight?
Good, man. Sorry, I was sitting there talking like, a moron.
All right. So last week, everybody, I mentioned Rick Hummer. I'll go ahead and give him the quick little intro again, and then I'll let him talk about whatever he wants to talk about tonight concerning the mud flood and so on and so forth. So I first met Rick Hummer in 2017, November 27, at the Flat Earth International Conference in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that's where Rick was the MC. He was actually the MC at all three. And then the first time, and I have to admit this, I don't know if I ever told you this, Rick, but I had a bit of a bro crush on you. He's a really good-looking guy, and so I was able to kind of work my way into a picture with Rick. And I don't know if you remember that. That's where Matt Long is in that photo too. And I don't know if you guys saw the Flatlanders documentary trailer that's coming up, but Matt Long is in that trailer. And then Rick Hummer calls me up, I don't know, several months later on the phone, and just randomly, it was on a Sunday morning. I remember we talked for like 3 or 4 hours, and he's like, I didn't get a chance to meet you at the conference, and I was thinking about you. I was like, really? You were thinking about me? That's crazy. And so we just started talking, and he's, ever since that time, we talk every, 4 or 5 weeks, and he's just a great guy to vent to about all the things we see in the Flat Earth movement. When I was just talking about when I was in Europe, he's the guy that got me the interview with Patricia Steer. That article blew up. I mean, even the BBC was, I'm so glad they didn't, but even the BBC was talking about reporting on that article. And because I don't want the association with the BBC. But anyways, that really blew up. And Rick's the guy that called Patricia up and got the interview for me. And then catching up to speed where we're at now, it was in 2019 again at the Flyers Conference in Dallas. That's instantly where like everything goes down. You like make all your alliances and break alliances and so on and so forth. These conferences. But we were at the bar and Rick just started to be like, hey, have you ever like wondered why there's these like all these like basements everywhere and they've got these doors leading to nowhere? I'm like, what are you talking about? And anyways, he's like, dude, you gotta like look into this, So that's where we're at. And he's the guy that got me really crazy into mud flood. I never would have looked, I don't know if I would have looked into it without him. So anyways, welcome tonight, Mr. Hummer. And why don't you tell the room about yourself?
Okay. Well, first, thanks for having me. And what I think is great is we're able to question whatever and look for answers, because here's the thing. I learned my lesson so many times, like you really don't know if you don't go look for yourself and just quit letting somebody else tell you what is true and test it and, figure it out. Because, the whole flat earth thing was one thing. And whoa, I'm getting dings in my ear really loud. What is that? Okay, hang on a second. That's not going to happen again. Sorry, guys. That like blew my eardrums out. But anyway, long story short, yeah, throughout my life, I've, found out that, there are a lot of things that I thought were true that aren't true. And so I worked in radio. I went to college. I went to college to go play ball, and that didn't work out. I didn't get the shoe contract. It's a joke. And I had to find something that I really enjoyed doing. And I just found myself gravitating towards broadcasting. I really liked it. I liked being able to write. I liked being able to, be creative and have fun. And that's kind of what happened to me. I just kind of got into radio, and I went from one market to another. It's kind of what you do. You kind of, set a goal. I want to be the number one night guy, and either you wanted to settle down in that place or you moved on. And I was one of those guys. I just moved around a lot, and I had some goals that I wanted to reach and achieve, and I wanted to do other things and get into writing and doing stunts and whatnot. And my broadcasting career actually had a big change sometime around 1997-ish, 98. And I was actually living in LA, and I just started seeing through what I was involved in the radio industry, the TV side of things I was just starting to get into, and definitely getting into the writing and doing storyboards and being around people that were quote unquote famous, we would call famous or celebrity. And what I found was I was actually in quite a few smaller circles that were kind of intertwined. So my circle was actually pretty large in the grand scheme of things for that size of town. Most people have these smaller cliques. While I was so connected just because of the radio side, that it allowed me to be very versatile with who I was around. And so opportunities would knock, and it was because I think people were friends with me. It wasn't because I was in some kind of crazy cabal, cults, club or something like that. And what I realize is that this stuff is so deep now that I've been away from, the city for years. I left in 98 and never looked back. I never wanted to go back there. Not to live anyway. I mean, I've got friends there. Of course, it's beautiful there. It's great to go. There's nothing better than seeing the sun, at the end of the day, disappear from the sand right there on, whether you're in Zuma or Malibu or wherever you are. It's just a gorgeous place to be, obviously. But my point is that even though I got to experience a bunch of stuff in the media and was just given liner cards to read, to, you get your news feeds from the AP. That's what the station, which is Associated Press. You literally get your news fed to you just like people get their news fed to you. It's coming down the chain. And when I realized that that's exactly what was going on, was around somewhere around ultimately around 2004. I was back here in Indiana, and a World War II veteran called the radio station that I was working at the time, and I was working at a country station. So very pro-war, pro going into Afghanistan, pro going to Iraq. And it was right after we went into Iraq that I woke up to just the whole truth about not just the weapons of mass destruction, but the it always bothered me. Why are we in Afghanistan again? What did they do? From the very beginning, and then I woke up to 9/11, not adding up to what was written in the 9/11 Commission and things missing. And so what I found was I felt so duped that something triggered in me. Plus, I looked at it and I started looking at the United States at that point. And I was looking at my life, and God was doing things in my life, was pulling me away from the business and the industry side of it, and wanting to be somebody special, and wanted to be number one and this and that. It really, it put my pride in check when I realized, wait a second, I've been pushing and banging the war drum. And that's exactly what this World War II veteran called and said to me, because that's the guy that woke me up. That's who God used to wake me up, or at least plant a seed and change my direction. And what I was actually doing with with my time and my energy and my conscious hours, and ultimately testing things. And that was the springboard to get me more focused on, well, what else is there? What else do we need to expose? And that was kind of the role I took. And I guess maybe a part of me when I first got into radio and television, that I thought investigative journalism would have been the most fun thing to do. But I found out that just being a radio jock was a lot easier, and the money was just as good, and your hours were pretty much set. So that's how that happened. And I'm not trying to be long-winded, but that's what got me started. That's what happened. I had this long radio broadcasting career, some TV stuff, and obviously I was dabbling and getting into the stunt scene back in the day in LA when I was younger and stupid, and more stupid, I should say. And here I am. I started doing tests on Lake Michigan and high altitude balloon chasing, to doing laser shots across Lake Isle, to working with people with FE Core, just exchanging ideas. It turned into an actual research group where actually, where there's an organization and people are working together. And instead of just, people kind of talking, we're actually doing things together. And so I realized, like Noel said, somebody sent me a file of something they had downloaded because they had been removed from YouTube. And it was just this, it was like a montage of pictures of these buildings where the windows were cut halfway off in the basement. And then it's the pictures of these, floors, lower level floors with windows on the exterior walls in the basement, which there's dirt there. So why are there windows there? And that was what intrigued me first. And I knew if that intrigued me enough, it could maybe intrigue Noel enough, because that was one of the things that I did bring up to him, is why would they do that? Like, it was kind of like the same thing as, why don't they ever turn the camera around and show us the fourth wall? It was one of those types of questions. It was one of those things that piqued my interest. Like, yeah, why would they build, what, they have an escape route? Did they have a tunnel system out the window in the basement? I mean, no, there was no dirt there at one time when they built the building. That's what it was. So you start looking into that, then you come to find out, and I was just getting ready to say the orphan trains and actual trains going past right now. Then you look at the records of the orphan trains, and how this wasn't just something that was local. It was, just or regional. It was all over the place. So something happened. Like, why would there be so many kids displaced and moving to this territory and that territory, and literally being taken from, the East Coast out to the middle of nowhere? And what's going on with that? How come that's not being taught in school? How come we're not told about the earthquake that, made the Mississippi River run backwards and ring the church bells, I think, in Boston, to where one of the presidents of the United States, he and his wife actually felt the earthquake, at the White House. I think they were at the White House at the time. I think they had it done by then. But whatever it was, I remember that was one of the things I was like, wait, why aren't we told about these things that actually changed? How come we're not told about the pyramids and the Serpent Mound and all that in Ohio? How come we're not taught these things? How come we're not taught about the pyramids in Minnesota and Illinois? And so yeah, all these different questions came in. So when the mud flood thing hit, it was about the same time that Tartaria was coming out. People were talking about this empire called Tartaria. So, and if I'm talking too fast or if I'm not, are we still good?
No, you're good.
Okay. So when Tartaria first came up, I looked at it and I'm going, why have I never heard of this? Well, I mean, I like history and I would have loved that. And I started thinking about some things, and then there were some other things that I was looking at right about that same time, really praying about it and just kind of looking for the right answers, and just starting to really get into it. And it was about the tribes of Israel, where they ended up, and the displaced people, and where would they be? And so I started thinking, could Tartaria be a part of that? Could that be connected to the lost tribes, or could it have been another empire prior to the lost tribes? Could it have been the enemy of the north? Could it have all these things were going through my mind, and I thought, well, it's really just weird that we don't see it anywhere, nowhere, but all of a sudden it's popping up. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, there's a lot of people getting into that. Something's being revealed there. Especially if it's legit that this was a true kingdom and these were people and they were very well advanced, obviously something's going on here, that somebody doesn't want this being taught in a curriculum, whether it's a public school or private school, because I didn't know anybody in my life that had ever heard of Tartaria. Nobody, including teachers. So that was one of the things that got me. And then I don't know what it was. It just kind of sticks out. I just think it's kind of cool the way that, the Most High works. I truly believe that our Creator has a great sense of humor. Obviously, look at us. But at the same time, I look at this and go, okay, this was kind of strange. And as I was telling Noel about the mud floods, I was actually talking to a guy by the name of John Pounders. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably know who John Pounders is. So Pounders and I were talking about Tartaria. And I said, have you heard about this? And he said, what? And I was like, yeah. I started explaining. He's like, yeah, I actually I have heard that. It's just weird that you're bringing it up. And now hear this. And so he actually went somewhere. He was going out of town, and they actually had like an Airbnb. And he said something about, I'll have to look into it or whatever, however he worded it. But he goes into this Airbnb where he's staying, and the people had a theme throughout this house. Whoever owned this home, they had globes all over in this house. Like every room had like a globe of some kind. And John said they were all over the place. And he walked in, and the first one that he walked to was like, it looked like an old one, like a collector's item, like an antique. And he went over and he looked and he spun it, and immediately it popped off the globe at him, and it said Tartaria. I thought, wow, like you can't write this kind of stuff. And so I he called me from the house. He's like, you're not going to believe this. I'm looking at it. So I'm like, show me, send me a picture. So he sent me the picture because I thought, man, he's just joking. But no, it's true. It's like, right when you're asking for confirmation, you have a childlike heart. I believe that God will give you answers. He's already revealing things to people, and he'll give confirmation. So I don't know. I feel like I've had it happen quite a few times. And so it just gives me complete faith that he is exactly who he says he is. Things are playing out, and nobody has it all figured out. And I believe that there's a lot more for us to learn, especially if we're in the last days. It's going to be revealed of things that were once hidden that are going to come forward. And I believe that a lot of that's already happening, whether it's biblical cosmology, whether it's the actual way that physics work, whether it's actual the way that the wind works, whether it's the fact that we are capable of having free energy using the air. There's all kinds of things. I mean, so many things that are obviously controlled as well. And I'm not aligned with those people that are in control. That's the biggest thing. Is I fear God and in a healthy way. And I know that if I don't fear him, it's really easy to act like I don't. And I want to be as wise as I can. And so that's where I'm at. I've been searching this stuff out and seeing the evidence of, what I believe is mud floods and actual proof that obviously people don't build buildings with 4 stories of basement windows. So it's just one of those things that it makes me laugh that it's so obvious, but yet you bring this up, and the first thing that happens is somebody comes at you with, as a character assassination, that's on their mind is I'm gonna assassinate this guy's character. He's crazy, he's stupid, he's goofy, he's this, he's that, and who cares? I'm looking at it at this point. I'm going, if I'm told that there's no way it could be this, chances are it probably could be. That's the way it is at this point. There's so many strange things. Just the other night, I saw what they're calling Starlink. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, and there's no light pollution. My property's got, I don't even know how many acres is behind me, but it's going to be soybeans this year. So it's nothing but as clear as you can get, not even a tree in the yard line. It goes from yard to field, and it's flatter than all get out, and you can see the sky. And I watched Starlink come over, whatever this supposedly is. And I just kind of chuckled because I'm going, this is not what they're trying to tell people. There's something else going on here. And I just don't feel like they're trying to better our communications with that. But yet I'm sitting here watching something cruise across the sky that I can't deny. There's something going on. They're playing something. Somebody's doing something. I can see the lights at least. There's something lighting up. Do I know what it is? No. Do I believe it is what they're telling me? Absolutely not. No way. And I'm not saying they're just liars. I'm just saying I'm not going to let them deceive me. I could tell you that, it's going to rain tomorrow, and it doesn't. And I could just continue to say that it did rain. I didn't mean where you were at. I meant over in Norway. So these people switch their stories. They do all this, and there's media manipulation. They're going on reality fraud, and it's in our textbooks. So from the time that we're little, from the time that we can actually comprehend what's on TV, to actually going to school and filling out worksheets and taking tests and regurgitating the same information and then hearing the same stuff on the mass media, we've been more controlled than what people realize. And I truly believe the only way things are going to get revealed in these days that we're in and they are being revealed, is by the hand of God and by the grace of God, and by his sovereignty and who he is, and the truth that he's going to reveal, that's going to keep people from being deceived. And I know the scriptures truly say that he's going to send a strong delusion. And could this be part of it? Maybe so. Maybe that's what's going on with this whole CV thing that's going on, this whole scam that's been happening since, last year. So I just look at it from this standpoint. We've got a lot to learn, and the more that we learn, the more that we can share, the more that we can conquer and battle our adversary and continue to tell the truth. So
something you had said in there that struck me, and hopefully this isn't too left field for you, Rick, or anybody else, but you had mentioned Tartaria on the globe. And for anyone that doesn't quite know, generally, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but generally that would be what we would call the Russian Federation today, the Soviet Union in the past, and also going down into like Mongolia, perhaps places in China.
Genghis Khan, Genghis Khan region. And that's what they're saying. If you look at the pictures of the people of quote unquote Tartaria, a lot of their attire, their style of dress was very much so like what you were saying down in that region, more of the Genghis Khan. At least that's the pictures and depictions I've seen. So, again, I haven't been there, don't know anybody that came from there, but it's very interesting that this is popping up. So, and there's something going on with this, but go ahead, Noel. Sorry.
That's funny. I don't really know anyone from that area either. Well, okay. So I don't really know, because, we talk about these buildings we see all over the world, that they seem to be aligned in some way, that there's, some commonality between all of them. Correct. But I don't know if we're seeing the same thing as what this Tartaria is. We talk about the Tartarian Empire, but this did occur to me that I'm about to go out there, but the Ashkenazi Jews. Okay, so and Rick, we've never had this discussion. I don't even know how you feel about this. I'm coming out with a paper in about a month from now, that goes through all the scripture verses that show that Yahuwah's eventual return to the promised land wherever that is, whether that's in Israel or wherever, which I'm actually kind of prone to think it is now. That it's because he takes an issue with the sons of Edom who have taken over the land, the children of Esau. And this is in several Ezekiel, Isaiah, all throughout, talking about how when he returns, he's going to basically take it away from Esau. And then, well, that's kind of interesting because it's like, well, whose people are over there right now, right? So when you look at the history of like even the birth of the Soviet Union with the Red Army, the Bolshevik Revolution, it was the Ashkenazi, which basically just means German, the Ashkenazi Jews who were leading the Soviet the communist revolution. They essentially all were Lenin, all of those guys. They were all Jews, and I don't believe these are, of course, and I need to stress here that I don't believe that these are the same people as the Yehudim in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's what I was just thinking about this because these Ashkenazis kind of come out of nowhere. They had kind of been around the Black Sea or stuff in that area for the last few hundred years or so, according to what we're told. They kind of come out of nowhere. And there's just this whole Ashkenazi Jewish people explode on the scene in Russia. And of course, then we get into World War II and Hitler's trying to expel them and that kind of stuff. And that whole tale. But it's almost like there's an assault on whatever this Tartaria is here by the Ashkenazi people. I just had that thought. I want to throw that out there. Hopefully it wasn't too much explaining.
Well, no, can I ask, when you say an assault on it, do you mean to completely get rid of its existence in history?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we know that with of course Napoleon and Alexander, who were basically like kissing buddies or whatever, yet they were at war with each other. And you see like the double-headed phoenix that they're both using as their emblems and all that stuff. And they were going in there destroying it. But it seemed like there was whatever this whole USSR hoax psyop thing was, that it was a way to mask and ultimately destroy whatever was going on there, what we see on these globes and these maps called Tartaria. I just had that thought. I'd never made that connection before until you brought up the globe just now. So,
well, that's, to me, it's there's a verse that always comes to mind when Yeshua says that they're going to call themselves Jews and they are not, but they're from the synagogue of Satan.
Correct, the Revelation, yeah.
Yeah, and I look at this and I go, well, where do they come from? Who are these people that he's speaking of? Who could they be? Who matches that description? Who's doing these things? And if we will know them by their fruit, well, you just got to kind of figure out what they're putting on TV. And I know what I've seen on television over there. I've seen Israeli programming. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've watched it. It's, I don't have to live there or be there to watch what they're putting on TV. And, some of that stuff is just awful, what I've seen. And I really question if any of them are Semitic. I was just in a conversation the other day with someone who claimed to be a Levite, as he said, a Levi. And he started talking to me about his genetics, and he said he was traced back to Babylon, and I was kind of like, okay, and he was like really proud of that. I was like, okay, cool, kind of giving a little applaud there. Okay, you come from Babylon, but that would probably just, in my mind, just cement the whole Esau thing even more. Because it shows well, like you said, there's going to be a takeaway, there's going to be a take back. So if that's the case, again, who's controlling it now?
Yeah.
Hey, no, let me interject here. What's interesting in this revealing, when Tartaria came to a lot of our attention, we realized it was a time of peace. Many of us were like, you couldn't have built all of these things if there wasn't a time of peace. And that's not been in our so-called history. And when that was revealed, so many of us then went, hey, the Millennium Kingdom must have been here.
Precisely.
This, right.
So one of the things I was looking at, I've been looking at a lot. I was kind of reviewing again today, were these star forts, and there's how many? I don't know if everyone knows what a star fort is or has been to one. Here in the East Coast, we have a few of them down in Florida. I don't know if any of the Florida crew has gone to them. There's one in St. Augustine, I believe. There's others. There's like two others out in Pensacola. There's another out in Key West. I love the explanation on the one in Key West. Like it's like a couple hundred miles or something from the land, at least 100 miles, and it basically Lincoln built that as a prison during the Civil War. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure. I mean, I went out there to that went out to that one, but
all over the world.
Yeah,
Ohio has them.
I have a theory that these star forts may have been Torah observance, that they were basically, like I was just reading in Numbers. I think it's the first couple of chapters of Numbers where it talks about how everyone with leprosy and these other sicknesses and diseases they talk about would have to go outside of the camp. And I can't help but wonder if these were healing centers for people who had to go outside the camp, who were diseased or whatever, that they would get the frequencies and the energy and other such things there. And then, of course, they were repurposed, of course, for military fortifications as the expedition goes in the 1800s. That's just kind of one of my thoughts on that. And yeah. Hey, so Rick,
I have a question on this because this is interesting because if the millennial reign say already happened, is that what he was saying, right? That the millennial reign was here. That's why there's a lot of the same architecture, a lot of the same what looks like could have been technology.
Yeah, the reason Michael gave specifically was because it was a time of peace, and even when you look at most of the mud flooders, the Tartarian people, they don't seem to have a love of scripture. They but they all advertise this idea that this Tartarian kingdom was a place of peace, and that this New World Order came in and capsized it and completely ran it over and destroyed it.
Gotcha.
Which fits in with the millennial idea.
So if that happened, obviously the calendars are fake, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
yep.
Okay, and then here's the other thing. There's cities or there are streets that are under the ocean, right? In different places. There's these monoliths all over the place under the water, off of the coast of Japan, I think off of our east coast in a couple different places. So where did is that pre-flood then? Or did something happen to where, like, and I'm trying to tie this all in together. So if there was an earthquake in 1812 that made the Mississippi run backwards, and there are maps, I believe the late 1600s, showing a giant lake in the mountains of the Rockies with, I believe, sea creatures depicted on that. If there was an earthquake or say a mud flood where the all these mountains, and there's other regions in the world too, by the way, where they show that there were great giant lakes up in these mountains. If there was an earthquake simultaneously or all within a year apart, would that add that much more water to the sea? And I know it sounds ridiculous, but where did the water level come from that we would have these cities under the water? What time period did that happen? Or where did those cities exist on the timeline? That's the one thing that I'm trying to figure out. And there's a reason why.
Yeah, okay.
That makes more sense with Noah. That makes more sense with Noah to me, because we can look at all over the world where there's so many things that are next to the sea. There's been no recent in the last 200 years rise. So many star forts are still right there.
I think that
the star forts. The star forts are they were at a higher elevation than what they are today. So
no, not necessarily.
So they were built
They
after
could have been ships.
So
Who knows?
Okay, yeah, true. So what you're saying is the star forts came after the flood as well. or the Star Force would have been built during the Millennial reign.
I would feel that. Right.
So
Where Noel said this before, right? Noel, there's been more than one kind of event.
yeah, there's a lot in there to. So okay, let me just talk about the water rise real quickly. Is all science, and I say lowercase science at this point, points to the fact that there has been no water rise, ocean rise for the last, I think, 100 years is when they started testing it. But however, I do theorize, and I think Rick and I have talked about this a little bit, that there may have been some sort of water rise at the time of the mud flood. You look at the city of New Orleans, for example, and Charleston. I mean, the city of Charleston is kind of similar, that we have a water wall, and you have to ask a question like New Orleans, why would they build the city below the ocean? That doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah.
That you would build this marvelous city that you needed a wall to protect everyone from drowning. It almost sounds like a Dr. Seuss book. Actually, there is a Dr. Seuss book about that.
Boston is like this.
Manhattan, Lower Manhattan,
Bombay, Mumbai, Manhattan, exactly.
So I do think that there was a water rise. How much is the question, right? And as I've pointed out before, one of the things I think is we have to kind of distinguish is that there were probably a few different major events in Scripture. That this is the beautiful thing about the Bible, is that it actually pinpoints these different events that a lot of the mud flooders I'm looking at, they'll look at like that giant elephant in Spain. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah.
They'll be like, oh, the New World Order did that like 200 years ago. I'm like, well, wait a second here, because we get the War of the Titans in the Book of Enoch, and so you can look at a few different events. We have the what we would call the recent mud flood, which, as I pointed out before, to me the year 1812 is irrelevant, because if you can even pinpoint the year 1812, if we're going off the Gregorian calendar, it could be 1850 or 1750, and they just tell us it's 1812. You see what I'm saying? Like it's hard to really gauge. I think a lot of things around then, from like 1750 to 1850, are kind of all spread around and kind of confused, and so we have that.
What's the scripture about changing the times and oh my gosh. You want to talk
Jeremiah?
It's in Daniel. It's in Daniel chapter 9, I believe, where he will change the times.
Basically, like maybe the calendars.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I definitely believe the Gregorian calendar is a huge part of that. So you have the 1812 event, you have Noah's flood, you have the War of the Titans, and I would stress the possibility that the creation account in Genesis chapter 1 is a recreation account, as there are scripture verses in Isaiah and others that talk about the cities that did not have men in them, that are destroyed. And so I sometimes wonder if we're looking at these 4 or 5 different things. You look at that elephant, when we look at the mud fossils, that's probably the War of the Titans before the flood. You look at
the same guy that you're talking about that did the revealing of a Titan. That's Mike is a friend of mine, and I don't know if you met him or not, Noel, but
I've interviewed him.
Okay, so Mike's very, very, very good work as far as I'm concerned. He just being able to actually go in and show you the different types of bone structure inside these holes, these caverns, would be an eye socket, it would be an ear canal, would be what we would consider for us to be like a nasal passage. There's so many different things that are right there in our face, and to say, well, that can't be. I'm not going to be that guy ever again, because it's too real that this is so mind-blowing, and what a trick that the people of the last days would act as if they're the smart ones when there have been civilizations way smarter than us. And I've always thought that especially when it comes to the Bible, people say, "Oh, it's just a bunch of stories written by guys wanting to control." I'm sitting there going, first of all, that's the easy way out. Second of all, most of these guys, if you know anything about them, were killed for actually saying the things that they said. And we're at a point right now where how can anyone say that they know better of what was going on at the time of the people who were actually going through it? And so that's my whole point, is that I'm watching all this stuff unfold, and with Mike's work with this giant elephant or pachyderm, whatever it is, whether it was a mammoth or whatever, this thing is so huge that to me it makes me go, okay, if that was part of Genesis, if that's why, that may be part of the reason why the flood came. Because if he didn't, one of those things walking around would just completely wipe out a city just as he's looking just for something to eat, not even paying attention to what he's stepping on. It was that big. It's the size of a mountain.
That elephant would have destroyed the ark just with a foot. Like it was
one
huge.
Foot. Just crunch. Yeah, no doubt about it. And to me, it's, and then the other part of Mike's work is all of these hardened hearts that he's found. Have you seen any of that?
I have not.
Oh man, he has found all of these rocks that all have the same shape and anatomically correct as what would be a heart. And the way that it's explained, this is another journey for you, because within 5 minutes of me being on the phone with him, and he's on a time difference because he's in Spain, but the sun was actually coming up here, and I said, hey, I'm gonna walk out here. I had a bunch of river rock, and I had a bunch of field stone that I had gotten for going around my garden and stuff. And I went over where the pile of field stone was. And I remember specifically seeing this weird looking rock. I'm like, what is this thing? And I picked it up and I showed it to him, and he said, turn it over. And I turned it over, and he went, oh wow. He's looking. I'm like, yeah, look at this thing. Do I have it out here? Let me have it in the garage out here still. I've got it. I kept the rock, but literally the rock was chipped open, and you could see the pores inside the what would have been a heart. Like I would have never known what to look for. And he's sitting there explaining to me what this thing was. So I'm looking at this going, what are the odds that, what's God say he's going to do? He hardened the heart of Pharaoh. He hardens hearts. And it's just kind of how it's poetic and real that maybe that's what he's done. He's hardened hearts of many. And it's literally, we're walking on top of them. I mean, I've never
heard that before. That's really bizarre. Does he have any theory? Your friend Mike, does he have any theory on where these come from?
He thinks that they were destroyed by, like if a body goes through, like say a volcano or anything like that, the heart, because of the lining around it, and if the body cooked at a certain temperature or whatever, that the heart would actually be the main thing that would survive, even over bone. Huh. The way that the sac that's around the heart, the protective sac, what it does, what it's made up of, it's really interesting how it protects the heart, and it literally, like, it would cook it to the iron or whatever the heart, whatever's in our blood. The way that he describes it, literally it petrifies it.
These the same shape, the same size as human hearts today? Or are they bigger?
Huge. They're massive. They're a bunch of different sizes. Huh. But they all have the exact same distinctive shape, and places where the valves would be coming in. Just amazing. And like I said, it took me 5 minutes to walk out, and I'm going, oh my gosh. And it's like, go find another rock. Pick another shape of a rock and go try and find rocks. You're not going to find as many as this particular shape, with where the markings are, where all the indentions would be, especially a heart that might be kind of flattened, and compressed.
So how we talk about cities being built on top of cities? We've maybe, and if you talk some indigenous, well, I don't want to use the word indigenous, we all are. Some cultures talk about this being like the fifth age, that we've had other ages here. not necessarily going back like millions of years, but we've had different, if you want to say, time periods here or ages where, again, it reminds me of we've had one story, it got wiped here, and we've had remnants of it. Then it came again, and this is kind of the last. Now that's kind of goes into like where we go. What is this stuff? When is this stuff from? Why is this stuff here?
What if that's part of the whole process of the miry clay mixed with iron, the last kingdom? What if each one of those wasn't actually a kingdom but an actual era? And the last era would be where there's technology. But what if technology wasn't everywhere in everyone's household? It was only in certain places. Like you couldn't live out on the side of a mountain and drive into town in a George Jetson mobile. You know, you just drive off the cliff and you can just float in. Maybe that was going on. But my point is that maybe the kingdoms that we were taught, what if those are actual eras? That's just something that popped into my head. What if those are actual eras in that vision? I wonder what the original text says, how that would break down, if there's a way to break that down. Because what if that is something that explains ages rather than kingdoms? And the last one would be miry clay mixed with iron, which I would imagine, especially with what they're doing, technology is literally becoming part of our DNA. Just interesting to me.
Yeah, it brings us to now again. But also, it brings us back to 70 AD, where Noah goes to, if Yahushua came back in 70 AD,
Mm-hmm.
that what it cleared up now was then we're not waiting for the rapture, because then that happened back in 70 AD. So a lot of things shifted, and then what did that reveal next? And we went, well, if that's happened, are we waiting for the 1,000 years, or did the 1,000 years happen? So then it was like kind of being like the 1,000 years quite possibly happened. We have much evidence of it.
Where would Jesus be? Where would he stay during the 1,000-year reign? Where would he be geographically located?
We believe if we'll say the North Pole.
Okay, and that's where there's supposedly a giant mountain is, right in the middle.
Right.
Area also would be perhaps maybe the northernmost kingdom to that too.
You know what I would
call it the center pole? Would that be better?
The center,
right.
The axle.
Yeah, and we don't have a south pole. We have more of a, what would you call that? It's like a magnetic ring around us almost.
It still works out the same. I mean,
toroidal field?
There's still an east and a west and a north and a south, right?
With perspective, yes.
Yeah.
So with the 70 AD, where did this bring you, Rick? Because for us, when 78 came to, it was like it opened up our eyes to a whole lot of others, because once again, Yahushua came back into the picture, and all of a sudden we could see before, and we could see after clear, and we could see now clear. But then we also went, hey, and then we started realizing what was here all over the world being revealed. The architecture, the star forts, what the mud flood, and melting and all the change that had happened. Mm-hmm. But we were like, wait a second, something's pointing to us that there was a paradise time here. And there's nothing in the narrative that explains that.
And show me a time where it's blatant that people are actually like literally it's being broadcast to the world. Satanic rituals, literal, demonic behavior on television. I mean, I'm looking at this going, he's already being worshipped right in front of us. He's already set himself up to be esteemed as the Most High. He's doing it now. The devil is actually doing this. He's placing himself in a position right now to
correct,
have everybody worshiping. It's happening right now. And so when would that happen? Would that happen after the millennial reign?
Well, this is when we said, why would the mud floods happen? And if many of us came to the conclusion was Satan was let out for a time at the end, and his fallen ones to rule. And we said, well, then that happens when? That happens after. We figured it happened after the millennial reign.
After the millennial reign.
And then what does that bring us to? And then this is why many of us go into Jerusalem.
And this is why it's happening. Why it's so blatant is because it's happening right now. Huh. Yeah, that's what we kind of talked about, isn't it, Noel? Like,
yeah.
It's so obvious that there's an actual movement. Like, even seeing people falling for the shenanigans that are going on right now and putting their faith in pharmakia, into sorcery and witchcraft. I mean, that alone is mind-blowing to me. It was mind-blowing to me when this whole thing started, how many churches folded and caved and quit having service. I mean, it's like none of them got the Psalm 91 vax, I guess. So,
yeah, the 501(c)(3), they didn't have school the other day where I am because the school's giving out vax. It's just like, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we're hooking up with with the hospital and the DOH. I'm like, all for our benefit. It's really, and it's flipped. You know what I mean? Supposedly for our good.
Yeah. Then that's another prophetic thing. You know, they'll call what's evil good and what's good evil. So, but let's go back to this whole thing about where Christ would have been during the reign, if the millennial reign was happened. Let's say it happened, and he was in the kingdom. You know, on center point. Okay.
Noel's talked about this. He could share what we've discussed.
Well, go ahead, Rick. Finish your thought.
Yeah, because I'm thinking that for the mud floods to happen, I'm just maybe I've seen too many movies, but if once his millennial reign is over, where does he supposedly go?
Well, here's
or does he put the wall, or does he put borders up and you can't get there?
Yeah, last week when I was going over the Enochian calendar, the 10-week prophetic calendar, I pointed out a few things. One is that it's just like the Revelation where when Satan goes over the plane of the earth and he deceives the whole world after he's released, he deceives the whole world to surround the camp of Yah. Well, the same thing happens in Enoch's calendar, where we see that the Watchers, when they're released, it says that they trample over the highways and the kings of the earth, and they take over the righteous lands. By this point, in the 8th week of the prophetic calendar, it says that this is when the millennial kingdom happens. It says that the righteous build homes, like these big mansions all over the earth, which is what we're seeing. But what it says, though, the one thing that will frustrate the Watchers and the angels is that in Enoch, it talks about how they're going to trample over all the righteous lands, but they will not be able to take over the righteous city. And that's so I think that there is a camp. I don't believe it's New Jerusalem yet. I mean, if
the city, you're talking about the city when it comes in.
Yeah, I don't believe New Jerusalem has come down yet, but I believe I don't think Yahusha necessarily went anywhere. I think he stayed where he was at, and that has been closed off to us, which is
that's what I was saying. Is there a border? Yeah. Okay.
And Noel, there's a reference of the city of Enoch, I believe, in the writings of Abraham. So maybe that's another reference to a place. I don't know.
I think the city of Enoch is the same thing as the New Jerusalem.
Okay, I see.
It was actually, like according to that, the city of Enoch was a pre-Diluvian city on the earth that was taken up, and I think that that's the one that's going to return. So,
So here's my thing. If the border is up, this is and the reason why I was trying to ask that question is because it ties into the mud flood. Then, So the mud flood would have happened about the same time either the border came up, which would also mean that Satan and his minions would have been released or cast down.
Yeah, I think that they were. I don't know when the casting down happened. There's a lot of different theories on that. I mean, I kind of wonder if the casting down happens in the beginning. Well, no, that it happened a long time ago. But that's okay. So we talk about the Watchers are buried within the hills and the valleys of the earth.
Right.
They're going to come out of that. That probably is when the mud flood happened. Was Satan released from prison, wherever that was, at the same time, or were? Sometimes I wonder if the Watchers were maybe not released all on the same day, but they were released like months or years apart. You know, it could have been like a decade here and there, but there was all these random events where they were coming out. There's a lot of possibilities.
Does it say anywhere that they're all released simultaneously? And if not, what if they're not all released yet?
It seems to imply in Enoch at their return, plural, that they all come out pretty much at the same time.
Okay.
Now, I would assume that when John is writing Revelation that Satan is released, he never talks about the Watchers released, but the prophetic event seems to be the same thing. So I would assume that he would be released around the same time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Pissed and angry, and 1,000 years is a long time for a man to think and to plot and to scheme about what you're going to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So okay, so where does this leave us? What's next? If this is the case, if let's say that this happened, the millennial reign already happened, where do you think we are at this particular time now that these things are being revealed from our biblical cosmology? Obviously, bigger events happening that they're hiding from us. Complete territories that were once kingdoms are being hidden from us. Technology hidden from us. I mean,
I guess I don't know if I guess the big question is, it could be an either or both. The big question is everything building up for an invasion of the kingdom, which we see that with like NASA and all sorts of stuff, or are they just kind of the bad guys just biding their time until Yahusha is completely, or the Most High basically intervenes and said, "That's it, we're done here." Like we see, like with the COVID, you can't even call it a vax. It's
I call it a program.
Yeah, it's what is it? Genetic therapy. I don't know what even the right word for it is at this point.
Well, therapy sometimes is manipulation.
Right. I mean, they're manipulating, and that's what I'm saying. That we're at this point where they're just like making people into the image of the beast at this point. And so I don't know at what point. I can almost imagine it just gets to the point where Yahuwah, the Most High, is like, okay, my set apart ones can't even live like this anymore. They've been withholding from all this. I have to come intervene to save them because they're destroying everybody. So it could get.
Well, that's the whole thing. Yeah. So he says, I have to come back or there'd be no flesh left. We're flesh.
Yeah.
And if you change the flesh, you're no longer flesh in God's image, or God's image. So what do you have? You have
hybrids.
You have chimera again, basically. And I've heard them call some of this gene therapy a chimera virus. So that in of itself tells you, I mean, you're throwing animal proteins involved in this. You're putting it straight into the bloodstream. What else can go wrong? You're literally putting, and especially, what is it? There's a reason why we cook the blood, cook all the, don't have any blood. You drain the animal. When you cook an animal, you don't want to have any blood in it. You don't do that. That's just something you don't do. And if there's quote unquote life in the blood, what is life? Obviously we know what that means from a spiritual standpoint, but I'm talking from a biological standpoint. You take an organism and you put it and mix it into an organism that your soul is actually operating, and you take the quote unquote DNA or the life pattern of this, or code of this animal, and you put it into a bloodstream of another being, it's the days of Noah to me. It's the same thing. It's DNA manipulation.
Okay, so here's, and I don't want to steer away from anything you want to talk about, but I was interested to go into giants, because you talked about the giant mounds near your house.
Yeah.
And here's something that I'm thinking about a lot, is when we think of giants, biblically, we think human good, giant bad, right? So the Nephilim were bad, the Rephaim were bad. I asked you about the hearts earlier because, size it's kind of perspective in some sense, like humans might have been a lot bigger before the flood, right? So one of the things that comes into Tartaria are giants. And we see these gigantic doors the size of buildings. And, we know that there was a lot of giants on the earth. We see like the mummies all over North America, where they're dug up and they're giants. And so what has my interest is, we hear about the Spanish coming over, Columbus, and then the Spanish, and then the conquistadors. And in all these giant stories, I have this book in front of me. I have a couple of them. One's called The Giants Who Ruled America, and the other one's called The Suppressed History of America. In this book, the ancient giants who ruled America, the whole book is just going through newspaper clipping after newspaper clipping after newspaper clipping in the 1800s of, people digging up these massive giants in America, and then, the Smithsonian backs up, beep, 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 and hauls them off, right, and they all disappear. But, okay, so my point is that in the Spanish, in all the accounts of the Spanish coming over in the 1600s, really the 1500s, the early 1600s. Let's just go back to the 1500s. There's constant stories of these Spaniards coming over, and the giants were ruling North America. They were in charge of whole tribes, and then all of a sudden, and then we see this huge genocide that we're told of in the official narrative, that the Spanish came over and just mass genocide. Well, by the time the English and the French came over and started colonizing, you don't hear any stories of giants. They're all gone.
Or they're out west.
Well, they're further out west, but then by the time you get to the out west, they're killed off too.
Yeah.
And
that goes back to those maps prior to the mud flood, where it was called no man's land, where they said there were giants living in that area, and that makes sense with some of the reports where they said that the American Indians found where the ruddy or the reddish bearded giants were living, and they basically killed them with carbon dioxide.
Well, okay.
Carbon dioxide. You know what I'm talking about in the cave? This was in the newspaper back in the day.
Was it like Lovelock Cave or something like that? The Native Americans. Okay, so here's the big thing with Tartaria, the Millennial Kingdom, a lot of kind of stuff, is the Native Americans. They have no stories of this. Like they don't talk about San Francisco. They don't talk about Chicago. They don't have, and it's like, well, that's kind of interesting. All their stories of the giants are that they were bad. Again, Bible says human good, giant bad, right? Well, but then there are, like, you can look at some of the digs of the giants. They look like pretty nasty things. But then there's others where they're like, even in Yosemite National Park, when they pulled up that queen with like a crown on her head, she was like a 12-footer or something. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these, they're coming up with armor, like just elegance and crowns, and just really, they don't look like these, me smell the blood of an Englishman kind of like ogres. Like they seem like they were very elegant and royal.
That's what they dug up out here back in the late 60s, early 70s. And they thought they were digging up American Indians.
Okay, go into that.
Well, okay, so the University of Notre Dame came out to southern St. Joe County, which Notre Dame is located in St. Joseph County, but they came out to a township called Liberty Township, or North Liberty, Indiana. And it's on the outskirts of South Bend, probably 15 miles maybe. And there's a waterway out here, and it's called the Kankakee. And then there's other if you want to call them ditches or whatever, that's all changed. The northern Indiana used to be nothing but a giant swamp. But they ended up digging along this bank, and they thought they were going to be digging up, like, just looking for Indian stuff and or American Indian jewelry or whatnot, or just evidence. From what I understand, that was the official story, why they were coming out there. There were locals there that witnessed this. That was actually, I believe it was at the South Bend Tribune, and they dug up anywhere from 8 to 9.5 to 10 foot people. That was their height, and they were, like you said, Noel, they were kind of dressed in, like somebody did some type of ceremonial burial, unless they were all killed at the same time and they were just put into mass graves with whatever they had on. I don't know. But what I can tell you is they supposedly put them back and didn't take the bodies or anything. They put them back because they thought that it was Native American. You can't touch it, get away from it, go away. They didn't want to disrespect anybody. My feeling is I want to get a hold of the guy that knows exactly where the dig is. And I'm not saying let's go out and dig it up. I'm saying I would like to know if they ever came back and find the owners and find out if they ever came back and exhumed them, like you said, with the Smithsonian or whoever, and taken these things away. What I will tell you is that this area out here is, I was not alone on this, but there's a lot of wild stuff going on in the sky here, especially at night. There's things that have been seen. There have been lights that have been seen out there. There have been lights over Lake Michigan. There have been lights in the water, underneath water. I mean, just a lot of wild stuff that ties into the whole quote unquote UFO phenomenon, or whatever you want to call it. So there's something interesting about giants or Nephilim or, mutants, whatever you want to call them, or hybrids. There's something about that getting tied into the Smithsonian, which, I know the Smithsonian is the, I believe it's always been, its purpose has always been to get the information and hide it. But I don't know. I don't know what else you can do as far as, how do you prove anything that's true that they said they dug up, unless you actually talk to the eyewitnesses. And this is, some of the old timers that were there aren't there now. I mean, they're long gone. They're deceased. But I think there's 1 or 2 guys left that actually witnessed this, that are in this area. And I should try and track them down and have a conversation with them. But boy, wouldn't it be cool though if they did have a backhoe?
Well,
I mean, I would love to take something and bring it out and show people and be like, there you go. Here it is.
I won't give the person's name. He knows who he is. He can always jump in here. But I was at visiting another person at his house, and he has a massive giant mound in his property, and he was basically like, yeah, don't dig this up because your ass will be thrown in jail. They'll just come out and just haul you off for doing that.
Have you seen the photo where the Mississippi River and the Great Lakes if you turn it upside down, the Great Lakes were all connected? It was like the mouth of the Nile, and they show how the Mississippi was like the Nile, and that's how you have a lot of this here. And that would place giants over in the Americas in a way that, like, and also I think when we were talking about ages and kingdoms before, we might be going into remnants of this, but we know the architecture shows us that, hey, why is that door so big? So what is it? It goes to us again that, okay, we were being lied to. No matter what was it, we were being lied to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. 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 And it's good just to test everything. Now, do I make this my mission in life do I wake up every day and like put, my prayers or my concerns or my conversation with, the fathers throughout the day? Do I let this override that? No, I don't. But I know that I want to know. I know that I want to know so that I'm not deceived. And I think that it's very important, especially in a time like this, because people that don't even know half of the stuff that we're talking about know that they know a lot about Project Bluebeam. They know a lot about the deception that's coming, that they're going to try and pose as aliens. And my whole thing is what if it isn't holographic? What if it is something that can literally be very real and tangible and have its own DNA and that kind of thing? Could they be doing something like that? And I believe that's the one that's going to really get people to believe if they actually pull that off. And that, to me, whether that's
like locust from the pit, literally.
Totally. And this is the year of the cicada, the cicada, right. Whatever,
And if you see Starlink, and you said what they're doing, I'm like, well, they could project whatever they want up into the sky, make it look real.
Exactly.
So
have you
from above?
Have you heard of any of this talk about the resurrection of Nimrod, Rick?
You know what? I have heard of this, and I heard it years ago that they were talking about this, and it had to do with the whole DNA thing. And yeah, man, you get on YouTube back in the day when you could actually watch something. But yeah, I'd love to know more about this, because to me, if we look at what's been going on with our pop culture, or with our quote unquote, whether it's Santa Claus, whether it's Nimrod, whether it's whether you're keeping Yule or doing Christmas, all these different celebrations, man, there's so many ties back to actually it being Nimrod that I could see them doing this big reveal and him going, I mean, just how silly and how dumb, but I could see him going, "You did the right thing with Christmas all these years. It was me. I am Santa Claus. I am, whatever the guy's name for Yule. I'm him. I am Saint Nicholas. I am these things. I've always been this. It's been my spirit all along that's been guiding." I mean, I could see all the craziest things go down, setting everybody up. I mean, like I said, they got people wearing masks. Just hiding behind masks and putting a muzzle on and afraid to even look at each other in the eye. It got, the love is waxing colder and colder each day. And so, yeah, this whole thing with Nimrod is very intriguing to me, because it's kind of like,
what do you guys know about Janus? Is Janus related to Nimrod in a way, in terms of
the goddess?
I'm just asking. Yeah, the god or goddess. The two-faced god.
Yes. Yeah, the two-faced god.
Because something I've heard interesting, and because you bring up Nimrod, and we're talking a lot of the things we don't talk about the sea. Right? We talk about the land, the sea. Oh, there's a great unknown. Well, and so one of the things they have is they have a Janus Island in Antarctica, and they got a Janus Island in Greenland. And it's almost like, okay, what are these two points that we got here guarding? In a way. So when we say if Nimrod, they were doing these things, why? And you bring up this question, it's like they're revealing something. What is being shown here? What is being revealed here? And so, yeah, please continue, Rick.
Well, I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of if we know that Nimrod is look what was going on back during his time when he was killed. Look what all came from that. Look what came from his whole life. And look where it is today. And Skiba did what was the series that he just did? And it was was it the first should be the last, and something else? What was the phrase he used? Oh man, hang on a second. Let me look and see if I can see it real quick. I got it. But my point is that it's basically it's a resurrection. But is it Nimrod? I don't think that his is saying it's Nimrod, though. I don't want to don't quote me on this.
Skiba was the one who originally spoke about this, I think, because I remember him talking a lot about Nimrod.
Is it Nimrod or Apollyon?
Nimrod is Apollyon, I think, is what he was saying.
That's right. That's right.
But what would make interesting here is this ties into the story with they're preparing host body. They're trying for the stories that we heard. They're trying to, how do I say this? Like whether they're resurrecting or they're or trying to take over bodies.
Okay. Right? Like now that you just said that, with you just saying that, you just made me remember something that just happened here in the last few weeks. And Noel, I think I mentioned it too, but maybe it wasn't you I was on the phone with. Have you guys seen this guy in Israel right now? The Israel that they're calling Israel today. Have you seen this 30-year-old guy basically the rabbis are putting hands on him while he's touching the wall? Have you seen this guy?
I have not.
They're calling him Messiah.
Yes.
They're calling him Messiah. And he's half Jewish and he's half Muslim.
Huh.
But he's dressed as a Jew.
I saw that as well, but I had heard that he was just like considered to be like they were just honoring him because of his knowledge of Torah.
Okay.
I saw a couple videos on it, and then there wasn't anything concrete. But there's in all honesty, Rick, there's so much of that kind of stuff happening right now where it's just things are coming out and you can't keep up with it. I think it's like having so much information but having so little access to truth. They're just spamming all this stuff to distract us.
I'm telling you, guys and gals, I'm telling you, the only way of going about this at this point in time is testing everything in spirit and asking the Father to reveal it. I'm telling you, He's been loyal to me on this. The whole and I'm not saying I know everything because I don't. It's that if you go into this with a childlike heart, if you really want to know the answer and you seek it diligently, I do believe that that's what He's doing. He's connecting people together. That okay, I've done this research. Now here's what you need to go look at. Don't let me fool you. Go check it out for yourself. This is what this is the direction I went. This is where He led me. And I think that's where we're at. I think that's what we're finding is there's so many dots that are being connected that what are we doing? We're all trying to learn. And at the same time, work on our relationship with our Father, and do this the right way. And I think that's where, I think that's what we need to really, if anything comes from all this information tonight is what a blessing to actually have put on us a mind that doesn't want to just sit and watch cable TV and this and that. And that's, like I said, it's not me pounding on my chest and going, look at us, we're cool. I'm saying I'm humbled by this conversation because there's so many things I want to dig into now and see how it's all related into the scriptures even. And like Noel said, the book of Enoch, there's a lot in there about what's going on today and how everything works from the spiritual side as well. That if we can connect these dots, I mean, do you know how many people we could actually say, oh, you didn't believe in Jesus? Let me show you who He is. Let me show you the life of, or Yeshua. Let me show you the life of the one that actually came and did exactly as He said He was going to do.
And that's what brings us to 70 AD. And that's what brings us to 70 AD, that He said he was going to return. And Noah was like, I think He already did because He wouldn't have said it otherwise. And you just reminded me of something else about the times. And let's see if I can remember. You're right on, and the deception ran deep this time, but it was again. I know what it was. The rapture. Remember, there was so much debate. Is the rapture to come? Are you post, pre, mid, and what? We're all like, and then when we came to 70 AD and then the millennial happened. Oh, guys, we're way that happened. Well, what does that mean now? Even better is all's being revealed, and we know who's coming to make right.
Yeah, we're still going to get a resurrection. We still get eternity, and yeah, people really start to it's funny how people really start to freak out. I've had a lot of people
about this.
When you find they're like, "What? You're saying we missed the millennium?" Like they start
no,
they just go to overdrive and start overheating, and so I don't want to disrupt from what you guys are saying. I do want to just say we're coming up on 10:30, so if everyone wants to kind of finish up and leave, we can always just close this up and keep talking. But the one thing that really kind of gets to me that I haven't been able to totally figure out yet. It's not as clean of a picture as I would like for the millennial reign. It makes a lot of sense, but there's still a lot of things in there. Like I brought up the giants. Like, why are we finding giants all over the earth that appears to be reigning from different cities and civilizations? Why do we see so many buildings that are custom designed for giants, and libraries of giant books and things like that. And then a lot of the buildings, you can see, I had pointed out before you got here, Rick, I started to explain about when I was looking in the buildings in Europe, and I went to Bath, England, and I was making I was pointedly stating that when they dug up Bath, and their official explanation was that, it had been left unkept for a couple hundred years and the dirt buried it, blah, blah, blah. There weren't the statues there, and they went in and they put a bunch of statues to make it look Roman. And they'll even tell you this. So we can see all over the world where they were putting in gods and goddesses on top of these buildings in the 1800s, like in the Capitol buildings and that kind of stuff. So if they're millennial, they wouldn't have had all those gods and goddesses on them. However, there are some buildings that really bother me. One of them is Roslyn Chapel in Scotland. I went there, and that's one of the most occult. There's probably I think almost 100 green men in that building. Not to mention pictures of Lucifer, and I mean it's just it's crazy. In that Roslyn Chapel was built to look like Solomon's temple. And then you go to places like Chateau de Chambord, which was built by one of the Ninja Turtles, Michelangelo. And Chateau de Chambord, I was going crazy there when I went and visited it, because another, Enlightenment building. It looks very millennial reign, Tartarian, and it's this huge castle that was built to resemble the four corners of the earth. It was actually built to resemble New Jerusalem. So you're thinking, aha, this here we go, millennial reign, right? Well, what's really interesting about Chateau de Chambord is they had Michelangelo's original diaries in there, and the guy loved the coiling double helix. He was writing it all over his diaries like a Manchurian candidate. And over and over and over, he just couldn't stop drawing it. So that whole Watson and Crick story in 1952, that's so fake. They did not discover the occult, already knew it existed. They already knew about the coiling double helix, whatever is going on with that. I have so many different thoughts on that. But so when you go into the Chateau de Chambord, in the very center of it, they actually have a coiling double helix staircase. It's really crazy. This thing, predates the 1950s. Obviously, it goes back to the 1600s or whatever. According to the
You wrote an article about this. Yes.
Yeah. And it twists and turns around. And as you go up, so the two staircases never meet. And as it twists and coils up through all 5 layers, you start noticing more and more of these spiritual beings as you're going up. And finally you get to the top floor, and it's domed like the firmament. And on this domed firmament, you see centaurs and serpents everywhere, dragons. And you're well, that's really weird. Why are there Nephilim creatures and serpents and dragons all over the firmament? And then the coiling double helix breaks through the firmament and goes up to the top, and it's this glass elevator. It looks like something from Willy Wonka. And the tour guides, I went and asked the tour guides about this. They're oh yeah, it's the Tower of Babel. I'm what? It's yeah, and it's okay. So the designer Michelangelo, he's taking the coiled double helix and saying this represents our ascent and our eventual conquest of heaven. So I'm looking at this stuff going how in the world is this
strand too?
A DNA strand, exactly, yeah. And then and they're telling you about the Nephilim and everything with this DNA strand. You start connecting all the pieces.
Wow.
But
what town was that again?
This is in I think it's still in Normandy, France, probably on the southern border of Normandy. It's maybe 3 hours from Paris. It's called Chateau de Chambord. I could write it down here. I'll write it in the chat here.
So
you guys,
is it on the staircase was 5 stories? Is that what you said?
4 or 5 stories. Yeah, and this is castle story. So we're talking very tall ceilings.
Yeah.
He has photos of it on his website and his article about this place.
Yeah,
Put that link up if you get a chance, Norris.
I think you were going into about the DNA. like questioning the
Yeah.
DNA that we go, and we really have no actual picture. It's all
So
been a
yeah, and there's like really weird things in this castle. Like they could have planted this stuff, but really weird things. Like there's an actual date rape kit, and it actually shows Pan on the cover, like the goat boy Pan raping a girl, and it's actually like some weird things in there, like these like Apollo clocks and the same symbol that you see on Apollo 13. It's an Apollo clock, but they could have planted all that later. But I have these questions like, if we're looking at the Millennial Reign, what are castles like this doing? Did they just change the narrative? Did they, I don't know. I just have so many questions. How do you explain something like Roslyn Castle? Because that place, like, there is no, I can't justify Roslyn Castle. Like, that thing is like a cult.
and that goes old, and it's
What?
older than a few hundred. How old are these places, supposedly?
Well, the Roslyn Castle, the Knights Templar, the Friday the 13th thing is a big hoax. That they were all arrested, like thousands of them in one night in France, whatever. That's just so bogus. But all the Knights Templar went underground, and then Roslyn Chapel is supposed to, be a part of like the Grail myth and the Knights Templar and all that kind of stuff. Right out there out of Edinburgh. I don't know, so maybe 500 years old, Roslyn Chapel, something like that, according to the official narrative.
And the other place, the place with
Chateau. Well, Michelangelo. I think 1600s would be Chateau de Chambord. Bath, England, of course, that goes back to the Romans, according to the official timeline. But that was the reason I targeted those, because I was looking at Enlightenment architecture. I mean, some of this stuff is phenomenal, like Mont Saint Michel in Normandy, France. It's like straight out of Lord of the Rings. It's the most beautiful castle ever. But I could just go and I could look at it and go like, okay, well, there's the two pillars of Freemasonry and the eye above it, and like there's just weird things in all this stuff. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not. It
left over.
Well,
it was almost like
yeah.
They weren't destroyed, but they weren't used for evil purposes anymore, and they were left for maybe a museum, maybe. And then when they were let go, it's a church. It was so maybe back in the day. These were not nice places.
Well, they used some of these big buildings as mental health wards. So
right, and so when the Millennial Kingdom
programming,
right, and so when the Millennial Reign came, right, they weren't used for that. And then, like what Rick just pointed out, when in the last 200 years they've been used for all different purposes. And whether it's like that was used for a mental hospital, that was used for a mosque, that was used for a church. Wait a second, it's the same building. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
I have a quick question for Rick. If
you go for it.
So it's kind of a two-part question. So Rick, what would you say would be your quote-unquote area of expertise when it comes to like quote-unquote conspiracy theory and biblical cosmology and everything like that? What would you say are one or two or three of your main focuses and where you have the most knowledge?
The biggest one would be, if I had to pick a topic, the one that I've done the most footwork on in my life would be biblical cosmology, would be the flat earth side. That's the biggest one. And how does that pertain to the Bible? People will debate the scriptures all day long. I went straight to the Most High with this. I was praying for confirmation. I received it. I don't know if you ever saw the video of what happened, but just the whole thing of how he did it. I had lightning strike in front of my house, literally as I'm reading a folder that reappeared in a box of stuff that I put away in 1993 that I know I did not put that folder in there in 1993. Just wild stuff. And I guess if there's a conspiracy, the conspiracy is that I think man thinks he knows more than he does. And there's obviously ways that, the Father can do things that we can't understand. So my biggest thing would be flat earth or biblical cosmology, biblical earth. And
it it was probably like June of 2016, and Rick Hummer had one of the biggest moments in my life of biblical cosmology, and that was when he did the Chicago skyline test with Rob Skiba. Probably a lot of people can probably remember that, when the weatherman said that Chicago is a mirage. And so it was Rick Hummer's idea of going, well, wait a second here. I've seen Chicago from the time I was a boy across Lake Michigan. So he and Rob Skiba Charter both, they record the whole thing, and they do the experiment where they show the camera the whole time on
There's
Chicago. They're back, and it wasn't a mirage. And I was sitting at home, flat earthist, 2016, didn't know another soul who was a flat earthist. And I felt so alone and attacked everywhere. And when I saw that, when they came out that video, I was just like bawling, crying. Like it legitimized the movement for me. That legitimized the reality of Scripture in the world more than probably anything else that's come along was that video.
Well, and let me add to this, because this is what I didn't know that, Noel. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea that you actually saw that back then. That's pretty wild. But the thing that gets me is that when we were planning this, we only had like a 10-day window that Rob could do it. And the weather was kind of warm. And, you get the sun beating down on Lake Michigan in June, you're going to have humidity. And we were praying. I didn't even know that Rob was praying, but I was actually praying on the way to get Rob so that we could go do this test. And then Rob was praying at the same time. And then to find out later that our wives were praying for us at the same time, that we would have clear skies, that we would be able to actually pick up on it and see it. We all had the same prayer going on, asking the Father just to give us, give us help here today. We're trying to do this to bring others to understand, obviously exposing our adversaries' lies. And so the guy that owned the boat, he actually said, I don't know what you guys did, but I know what you guys are trying to do as far as getting the shot of Chicago on the way. He goes, but I have never seen Chicago this clear in June ever. And when we came out, I couldn't believe it either. I thought we'd see maybe the Willis Tower, which was formerly the Sears Tower. I figured we'd see how it's kind of a lot of times it's kind of jagged looking, and it's all the refraction, but no, it was right there. You could see it, and you could see other buildings as well. And there was just this really weird blue haze in front of the city, and I could tell, I'm like, man, the city's being magnified. I could tell, I'm like, the city's being magnified. Like, it shouldn't be as big as we're seeing it. The buildings are going to be a lot smaller the closer we get. That's what I knew. I'm like, it's the humidity, the particulates in the air, were literally, it's like almost like how a swimming pool works. But it was like a perfect type of humidity, perfect clarity through it. It was like a clean particulate, almost like a lens. And sorry, I'm wheezing over here. But it was just kind of wild because the whole time we had Chicago in view, the entire time there and the entire time back. And, the guy said, he goes, I don't know what you guys did, man, but, you guys have the best day I've ever seen in June or something like that. And I said, prayer, man. We were praying, because Rob and I, we actually prayed together then before we went out on the boat. And to me, I know what the word says, and I know that he's loyal, and I know he's faithful, and he is exactly who he says he is, and he tells us to do these things. And, it's imperative that we believe that, and we have the heart of a child. Like, he's not going to lie to us. So I've always gone into this whole thing. So to go back to the whole conspiracy thing, what is my second thing? My second thing is that we have been lied to about how real God is and what he says he is, even by the standards of the church today. When the disciples asked Christ what to do, what are we supposed to do, during this time? And Matthew 10 explains what we're all supposed to be doing, what the disciples were teaching. Where did it fall off that we're not casting out demons? We're not raising the dead. We're not, healing the sick. We're not doing these things that it says to do in Matthew 10. I fail at it. I'm not doing it. I should be doing. Could you imagine meeting one of the disciples today and us saying, oh, this is what I do in my daily routine? They'd look at us like we were morons. Like, you're what? So I'm even digging deeper on that end of going, what is the conspiracy? The conspiracy is that we're not even following what Yeshua said to do as disciples, as learners. The word disciple also can mean learner. So he says, go out and make learners of men. Well, kind of what we're all kind of doing right now. Maybe there's a purpose for all of us to be teaching this stuff. And, like Noel's got expertise on this. So I'll connect the dots with Noel. I'll talk to Ski about this. And it's, and it's always good to be able to be corrected and stand corrected. I believe that's why he put the disciples in twos. It was accountability and for, encouragement. There's nothing like having a brother with you, and especially if you're all together, especially, the original disciples. Imagine being in that crew and watching him walk out on water. I mean, just all of these things that you have to think about. Are we even close to, and we have the resource, we actually have printed Bibles, we have them in our hands. Are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? I'm guilty of it. I know I'm not. And I guess maybe that's the conspiracy. What is the big thing? The biggest, it's not flat earth. It's that am I doing, and is the church doing what we're supposed to be doing?
I 100% agree with that. Yep. That's we're here. We were sent here for one purpose, and that is, will we be obedient to the Father? I think that's really what it comes down to. Like we see, and I quote Zen Garcia on this a lot when he talks about the great contest. But the idea of the great contest is that it's between Satan and the Most High, and Satan's basically, like, we see it with Abraham and Jasher and with Job, and he's like, hey, look, if I do such and such, they're not going to love you. They're not going to be obedient to you. They're going to curse you. They're going to blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, let's do it. And it doesn't matter how much we've been lied to, what a reality is and it isn't. At the end of the day, are we choosing to be obedient to the Father? And this is why, of course, my theme verse for cosmology is Revelation 14:12, that those who are written in the book of life, we come to learn, are those that keep the Father's commands and the testimony of Yahusha. And so I find it tragic when people come into this, and we're kind of like all like a bunch of Gnostics in a way that we're just, around trying to learn truth and apply this. And when I see people just devour and consume, or I should say digest truth, and then they walk away like going, what is truth? And none of this is real. And that just breaks my heart when, at the end of the day, when people just throw scripture away.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And that's the whole thing and I don't want to be deceived, and I don't want to deceive anybody. I don't want to deceive anybody, man. I don't want anyone's blood on my head. And that's not necessarily selfish. It's just being wise. So this kind of all ties back into me being in radio all those years in TV and getting involved in the, the Hollywood scene of, wanting to be, involved in movies. My biggest thing was I always wanted to do like direct. I wanted to direct. I wanted to make my own picture. I want to do this. I want to make this happen. I. And when I realized that, hey, wait a minute, there's a limit to who you are. And you might want to find out who you're going to be standing in front of. And that wasn't me putting that thought in my head. And I believe that God is actually the one that wakes each and every one of us up, no matter what it is. He uses somebody, either plant a seed or an event to happen or a humbling. And I think, well, I know this, that he chastises those who he loves. I mean, he's gonna guide us in the right direction where he wants us to be. And so, kind of a point that I wanted to make on this, waking up stuff, if that's what we're calling it. And I do believe that's what it is. It's a awakening on so many levels. But one of the things that I constantly have to remind myself, and I do this as often as I can, is I don't ever want to make fun of somebody or look down at somebody that's not seeing what I'm seeing. And for a while in my life, I was really frustrated that people couldn't see the truth about 9/11, that they couldn't see the truth about who the United Nations really is, and what the Federal Reserve is, and I just started bombarding people with information that did not matter if they didn't understand that they are a soul. And so I guess maybe this is where the happy medium is underlying it, right in front of our face, is that we have a responsibility to be able to bring people into the flock, or at least plant those seeds, and to be a witness, not just by our words, but by our actions and by our faith and by our walk and by our, like you said, the discipline. And at the same time, we're also called to warn people of the dangers ahead. And I think that's where the church is failing. The church has not, when I say the church, I'm talking about the body of Yeshua, the body of Christ, who we are called to be. Many are called, few are chosen. Who's really going to have the guts to stand up to the world and call out and say, guys, there's a giant elephant in Spain. It's petrified, but it's there. Guys, there's a mud flood. There's evidence of mud floods. Guys, we may be living after the reign of Christ. Is that possible? There's nothing wrong with asking that question. There's nothing wrong with seeking that answer. But there are those that are of the flock that we know of, the flock is what we know of the flock. There are those that would say, you're not supposed to look into this, guys. It's not important. It's not important. It's not something that needs to be figured out. And I think just the opposite. I believe we're supposed to test each and everything and look at it in the nature and what it is. And if there's any lies connected to it, you expose the lies, because there's only one father of lies. And so if you expose those lies, you're actually taking on your adversary by telling the truth. And the truth will always lead people to Christ. I believe that if they are truly after the truth, they're going to be led to Christ. So exposing the lies of our adversary now, in the now, while it's happening in real time, whether the millennial reign has happened yet or not, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of these things are going to get people to open up the scriptures. And the beautiful thing is that in the scriptures, that's where I've always heard people say the real true conviction came when I read it for myself.
Yeah.
Apologies we kind of went off of the question a little bit, but I had a follow up, but that's no worries. Everything's important. The follow up question that I had, and I'm not sure if you have a video regarding this, or if you know a video, or if somebody does in chat, but I saw someone post a video there, like an anti-flat earther. Now I'm flat Earth, but I'm not actually a flat Earth. I am I believe in flat Earth.
Sure.
And part of what Rob Skiba said really stuck with me as well, just with regards to this, is that he's like the earth shows the earth shows the handiwork of Yahuwah, and that is what testifies his existence. And I remember Rob said a while ago, he's like, if flat Earth was not real, due to the amount of times that firmament is mentioned and how things are placed, he's like, I probably wouldn't have any belief in Yahuwah being a legitimate, like who he says he is, because that's all lies. And I would say that I think that you find evidence of a creator in your observations in science. Technically, science is a study of observation. So in real science, you find evidence of a creator, and then you seek out that creator, and I think Yahuwah is the creator of that. But this anti-flat earther dude had mentioned something about stars and the fact that if you're on the, I think it's on the northern part of the hemisphere, you look up, you see certain stars. If you're on the southern part of the hemisphere, you look up, you see different stars, or you see the same stars that couldn't appear on a flat Earth. Did you ever come across like collating the data when it comes to how the stars move and observing the sky at the same technical time from different parts of from different continents or different parts of the Earth?
Yeah, I've seen what you're talking about. They call them the Southern Star Trails. They're different than the patterns. And the whole thing is this was my point. It's always been my point. I'm not going to look up to see if my horizon line is flat. I don't know, and I don't think anybody is going to have the answers of how it works up there when he designed this spot for us. We're supposed to get it right here. So my point to you is that I don't know what goes on with those southern trails. What I do know is this: water lies flat in Australia just like it does in Indiana, and it's a natural level. And so by looking up, what I see happening, and I've seen stars go across the sky that or an illuminated light that just travels across the sky and just keeps on going. And could that be a quote unquote satellite? Could that be something that's levitating? Could that be something that's in some type of a frequency up there that's keeps it? Yeah, could be. Or could it be maybe a chariot? I don't know. I'm not there, but what I do know is that north is north and south is out, or south there or south there. It's out away from north. It's away from the middle. So I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you on that. What I do know is that from the time that we could walk and talk, any of us that have been around or born after NASA's shenanigans, we've been taught that it's infinite. It is so infinite. It's so big and vast that it just goes on and on forever. Which that's just the opposite, because if it isn't closed and it is exactly the way the Bible described, it's not infinite. It's intimate.
Yeah, local,
especially for us.
Intimate.
He made, but he made it for us. He started this whole thing to bring in a kingdom. This is his story. From the time that he divided the waters to the time that the kingdom lands on the ground. No more construction, no more nothing. The mansion's already built. It's done. From the time that he split the water to that in of itself right there, every single thing was thought out before it happened. And I believe
that could explain a lot of architecture that was here before. We're like, how'd they build that?
Especially if they're collecting energy. Especially if they're collecting energy and they were, harnessing frequency to help to keep the bodies healed. You walk in and frequency healing is real. I mean, I know people that are going through frequency therapy because you do have electric in your body. We're getting blasted all the time with radio waves that are just making us sick. It's a slow kill process. I mean, we're doing it to ourselves right now if we're on a cell phone. So, I mean, there's a lot going on, and I hope I answered that question about the star trails. I don't know how they work exactly. I know I've heard people explain it. Go ahead.
I can answer or lead to a direction. I've seen videos.
I'll clarify a little bit, just because there's some people talking about.
It leads to the magnetics. It leads to magnetics and how this plane is actually more constructed, which then shows you, if we want to talk, and how. What this question has been answered. Believe me, it's out there. What Rick said earlier, you got to do a little bit more searching, but people have already addressed that particular one, and have now other guys who have shown it on a scientific level, like making models in their house, showing how with the way this realm or plane is constructed, done the design, shown with things with magnetics, how that works, even the stars, the contrails, because it's not a mystery.
It's definitely magnetic. It's electromagnetic. It's the ether's real. It's
right.
And there's so many ways it works in a toroidal field.
Exactly. So it's not a mystery. But what has happened is there's been a lot of disinformation, like you guys are bringing it up. We've been taught it was so infinite in all of this, so we're coming back to, oh, wait a second. Here it is. So the questions against, this is where it's like, hey, it's great you can have that question, but is your question, you trying to dismiss the Most High here? Is that what? That's where I'm seeing where a lot of people, it's like, your question is not how does that work? Your question is the Most High real?
That's not the question. The question is how
no,
can
but I'm
someone
saying for others.
No, I mean
for some who go there.
Yeah, if you could find that information, Michael, like the information that you're talking about, that would be great. I've looked for it and I can't find anything on this particular subject. Just
Right, it's
where
been covered.
if you look up
You
in the
couldn't.
sky, you can see certain constellations can and can't be seen at certain times from two different places on Earth, which could like they claim to say disproves flat Earth. I know that, like you said, Rick, when you're looking down at the
I
Earth,
see this.
it's flat. Like there's nothing
Yeah,
flat. I'm just curious,
exactly.
like how would
I
that
see the
work?
Southern Cross where I am in Hawaii. I live in the middle of Hawaii. I see the Southern Cross,
Oh
and
yeah,
again,
I
it
mean,
goes to
like if you
it
can
goes
find
to.
those videos, I think that'd be super informative because that's the
So
only
how
thing that I
does
can't
this has been
find
explained?
explanation
So
for.
how would some of us see the Southern Cross if we're over here? And it
I
doesn't
thought you were in
question it.
Florida.
I think it's just a question of distance again, and from
Perspective.
perspective, and you can see it. But others have shown more of the science behind it to show, hey, it works like this, and that's working the same way.
Yeah. No, wait,
And
but
I'll
what
look.
was it? What was the other part to that though that he was asking? I think I kind of missed it too. Was there anything else on that question though?
No, it was just like that's pretty much like that's the only
Okay.
thing that I can't like. I've done a
Yeah, it's
ton of
hard.
research on
It's
flat Earth, right? So and
Yeah.
it all checks out. Like none of the crap that people
Yeah.
say seems to disprove it at all. And the fact that almost every single government entity operates on a flat model to do all their calculations, and like rail cannons being able to shoot miles and miles.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's just
exactly.
it's so obviously flat that it's crazy. But it's just this guy brought up a good point because the stars do move in specific patterns, and they can be counted on. Like they are the stars, the moon, the sun have been put in the sky for a purpose, and
Well, we call
that's
it I call it a circuit. They're on a circuit. Which is electrical. But the sun and the moon are on a constant drift as well. The sun, on the flat model that I've seen, and I tend to look at the AE map and say, okay, well, that makes the most sense out of any of them, but is that even all the way correct? Not necessarily. But the thing is the sun obviously is, whether or not it's coming into the summer solstice or the winter solstice, it's either coming towards you or it's going away from you, and on its quote unquote circuit. And my point in that is that if the stars are doing the same thing or they're on a circuit, they could be on a different circuit than the sun and the moon, which would also bring up how they were able to say, well, that's when the warble happens on the globe. And so there's, people are going to, I don't think anyone's going to have all the answers. I don't think that you're going to have all that. No one can give you the measurement of even the size of flat Earth, let alone the globe. They've never measured the globe. They say it's 24,901 miles. Who's measured it? Nobody. So, is that science? No, that's faith. Well, it's an estimation. Well, still, you're putting faith in it that it's that size because who measured it? Who held the tape? And so when we look at this, and I look at all of it, I think the southern sky thing is so cool because if it is something along the lines of if the lights are actually in the firmament, if they're actually in it, whether that means on the inside or actually inside the firmament, and if the firmament itself is like molten glass, then it could actually be more like a lens, which I'm not necessarily saying that's what it is, but can frequency act as a lens? Yes, and I think it could change your perspective, especially when we see heat waves on highways. It looks like the car's disappearing into water, and then you get to that same point where that car was and there's no puddle. The frequency did something. It literally made the car disappear. Can that happen with the sky? Absolutely. Why wouldn't it? And especially if Satan himself is the prince of the air, he knows how that would work and how you could literally get people to fall for the globe with mathematics that you've had plenty of time to sit around and think about the equation.
yeah. And I've actually done like my older brother and I did a bunch of research a couple years ago just to see what is the deal with stars, because it seems almost like you said, they're almost atmospheric phenomena. They almost like you can't ever really see them above a certain altitude, it seems, and they never show up there. So It's very.
What if the air is like a filter, like the movie They Live, like you had to have a certain polarized lens to see through and see the enemy, and you could see who was a human and who wasn't, or who was programmed and who wasn't. What if that's why Jesus says keep looking up. Are we supposed to be observing these things? But my point is that remember when Moses came down and everyone said, "Turn away from us, Moses! Don't look at us," because his face was so bright, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, why was his face bright? It's because he literally absorbed the light of God, and it was coming off of him. He literally collected it like a glow stick. And if that's the case, can you imagine why we're able to see the luminaries in the sky if they've been in the presence of the Creator?
Yeah.
I mean, they're glowing. They're glowing, and they haven't left their estate. I believe the stars could be the angels. And if all the stars are going to fall to the earth, well, what's going to happen when the angels are sent down here? Isn't there going to be, what's that say in Isaiah 66, talks about the chariots. It talks about the chariots that he's going to render with fury and flames of fire. I don't believe those are chariots on the ground. I could be wrong. But I believe they could be, literally, it could be of what is yet to come. And so, or did that already happen? I don't think it's already happened. I think that's when he's gonna plead with all flesh, it says. So at that point in time, I mean, are we at that point? Are we at this point? Could judgment literally be coming, like the wrath? Could that be on its way soon? That's something that I want to know. I can't help it. I want to know.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm looking. That's what I'm looking at. Is like, okay, you've revealed the cosmology to me. For me personally, you're showing me that there were creatures way bigger than anything I've ever heard. And my buddy Mike, he's one of the most humble people I've ever met in my life. And I told him, like, you act more like Yeshua to me than most Christians. So I told him, I'm like, you really do, man. And so I look at this and I look at how, the Father can be using anybody he so chooses to bring information to the table. And that's why I think that's what this is that, you don't discount anything at this point in time. If something's being laid in your lap that you can look at and go, this is weird, look into it for a minute, because it may be something that you're supposed to see.
Especially if you can't Google it. If you can't Google it, it's probably something.
No doubt. No doubt. It's the real deal. You guys hear me?
Yeah.
You guys there? Okay. Oh, yeah.
How are you?
I dropped my phone. Trying to hang on a second. I'm trying to go to speaker.
He sounds totally different now. Who is this imposter?
Hang on. I just changed my headset, and I'm trying to put my speakerphone on, and it's not letting me do it. Oh, there we go. There it is. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Your voice does sound different again.
It sounds different now.
Well, from 30 seconds ago.
Oh yeah.
Sounds deeper and clearer.
I had a headset on, so, and they've been through the washing machine.
So, like, what you said about the stars is very interesting, and obviously Rob Skiba says, if a third of the stars are supposed to fall to heaven, obviously, a third of whatever the stars are currently would, and if they're big, huge burning balls of sun, like if they're suns, that's just not possible.
Yeah, it could work. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question about that. No. So, isn't it when Yahusha returns, the stars will fall? Whatever ones are there, or we won't see them. Whether the scroll, like a scroll, the skies roll up, or the stars. What is? Yeah, could you go on that?
Well, I don't know. I put a lot of thought into that. Did the stars? Did that happen in the first century? Did a third of the stars fall? I mean, we also hear that like a third of the ocean life will be destroyed, and I'll have people come back at me and go, "Well, the stars didn't fall, the ocean life didn't die," and I'm like, "Well, I wasn't there. I don't know."
Yeah.
I often wonder if it's a repeated thing. One of the ideas of a star falling is that it loses its authority. And so I speculate if there's less stars in the sky now than when I was a child. I know that's probably, I don't know. I think that the constellations have been obviously consistent. You can look at all the old maps since the beginning of time. I would be interested to look at the really old maps, not just of constellations, but see if all the stars line up. Because I kind of wonder if they come and go. I mean, for example, stars clearly turn on at night. You can see them turning on. That's one of the big questions with the astronauts, right? When the astronauts go up, Neil Armstrong said he didn't see any stars, and then some of the other astronauts said they did see stars. And so, are the stars there when it's not nighttime? Do they come on and off? And so, if they can turn on and off, can the stars also fall at different points in time? I'm hearing my voice in someone's speaker.
Yeah,
that.
it's just a little bit of feedback from Rick, I believe, because he's off his headset.
Let me turn the phone down. Is that better?
Yes.
There we go. Okay, so my whole thing is I don't think Neil Armstrong then saw the stars because they weren't up there.
Obviously.
Yeah. The other thing is with the stars, though, one of the things that gets me is this tied in together that, when the stars fall, okay, if they are beings, it would make sense at that point in time to me. Now, maybe I'm looking more into this, but does it correlate with men's hearts will fail them for fear of what they see coming up on the face of the earth? Now, is that the release, or is that the falling, or is it something completely different and I'm just an idiot?
Well, it's assuming that Neil Armstrong actually went up there, which we can say, nah, he didn't, because we get the conflicting too from the same so-called organization saying, yes, they did, yes, they didn't. All right, you're lying about both. Why? Because no one's gone above to see that, which goes into all these other, what Noel just talked about makes more sense, which doesn't fit the narrative of what we've been fed.
All right, guys. I'm on. Okay, I kind of hate to do this. I've been enjoying this, but it is 11:10, and I'm a old man that needs old. I'm not an old man, but I'm a 40-year-old guy who needs 8 hours sleep. So I'm gonna be kind of closing up here. You guys are welcome to keep talking as long as you want here, obviously.
No, I've got to get hopping too. I've got some things to do, and I just really appreciate this. If anything, it's just made me realize, dude, get your head in the scriptures and be in deeper prayer and have more of these conversations, because if anything, it challenges you to learn more and to dig for the truth. And I think that we're supposed to be as equipped as we possibly can in the days coming, and definitely raising little ones. I need to have them prepared. I need to be able to show my wife this stuff and explain it to her, and be able to literally go, okay, here's where it's at. Here's where this could correlate. And like I said, we may not ever get all the answers. We may not. It may not be our calling. It may just be to, give a few nuggets here and there for people to chew on. And, if they like it, they'll keep on going. And I just look at this and go, what a cool night, Noel. Thank you for having me. And I hope I was able to be clear enough to people that, I guess who is Rick Hummer is just a regular dude on a journey like anybody else that realizes they're on a journey. You don't want to go down too many rabbit holes that lead you to nothing. You want answers, and I'm trying to be patient and be diligent at the same time. And at the same time, I have to pay bills and work and raise a family. And I'm just thankful that I'm not into reruns of Magnum PI or any other show. That my God has my attention elsewhere, and it's humbling, and at the same time it's exciting. And
I love Magnum PI, right?
Well, it's all good. I did too. I always wanted to hang out with Rick and TC.
I moved here.
I just thought it was interesting. I just thought it was interesting you brought that up because back in the day I used to have like a bro crush on Tom Selleck. So anything he was if Tom Selleck was in something, I watched it.
Well, then I know you watched Friends.
Well, I did watch those episodes. I was, if you have Pepsi and Coke, I was a Seinfeld guy. I love Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Wasn't really into Friends, but yeah, I did kind of drool when Tom Selleck was on that show.
That's classic. That's
right.
awesome.
All right, you let us know.
So if you ever shave your beard, leave the mustache for a little bit and give the Tom Selleck look.
Oh, I have done my wife doesn't like the mustache, but I've done the mustache.
That's awesome, man.
Well, thanks for joining us, Rick, and thanks for hosting it. No, that's it's great.
Yeah, I just like I said, if anything from this conversation is just dig deeper in your relationship and hopefully just grow to love God more and more each day.
All right, good night, guys. Shalom.
Beautiful.
Good night, man. See you guys.